What's up, everyone? Sam here from Wall Street Mastermind. I'm back today with another client interview for you guys. Today I have Jared on, and Jared just finished going through his summer 2021 recruiting process. And definitely lots of ups and downs along the way. And, I can honestly say I feel like Jared is one of the most deserving clients that I've coached, just in terms of, how well he knew his stuff and how hard he worked at it. So wanted to get him on here today and just kind of share his story and his experience with you guys and how the entire process went for him, and hopefully along the way share some nuggets with you guys in terms of things that could potentially help you out in your own process. So Jared, thanks for taking time to talk to us today.
Yeah, for sure.
So why don't we just kick things off by having you introduce yourself a little bit, help our listeners get a sense of kind of what kind of candidate you are.
Yeah. So I'm from Stamford, Connecticut. I'll be graduating from Brandeis in May of 2022. I'm actually a part of a 5-year program, and it's a combined program where I get a bachelor's and then a master's in international economics and finance. And so since I'm in my senior year now, it actually is technically like my junior year in a sense. And that's how I kind of went into the recruiting process. But before I decided to recruit for IB, I worked at a real estate investment firm and got some exposure there, and also took a class on real estate finance, which I thought was like really cool because I actually got to build out models and things like that. But I didn't really understand, coming out of that, how intense like the finance industry was in terms of recruiting and things like that. But once I decided to kind of recruit for investment banking and go full throttle, that's when I, really took initiative. I worked at a boutique M&A shop this past summer, and now I've secured an offer. So, before, I think there was just a huge lack of awareness, but over time, working with Sam and also just talking to a lot of people, was able to kind of really understand what the process is like, especially for banking.
Got it. You talked about so you go to Brandeis, which is, you guys are like a small liberal arts school, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How big is your school? Like, how many students do you guys have?
It's like 4,500 undergrad.
Okay.
Around.
And I'm guessing there aren't really very many people there who are trying to break into investment banking.
No, I mean, it's a very pre-med heavy school, pre-law heavy school. The business program, which is a graduate business school, was built out like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe. It's not a huge presence on campus, but there are a couple of older guys who are on the street from Brandeis, but there's really no presence of young guys, which actually makes it even harder.
Yeah. When you say old guys, like how old are you talking about? You're like MD
like
level?
MD level and up, basically.
And
a
up.
couple of DPs, yeah. And up, yeah. MD partner.
Super senior, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, I mean, that kind of explains probably why you just really had no idea how intense the process is, or just the lack of awareness is that, like, there's nobody around you that's doing this stuff and can really tell you what it's like. And so you're kind of in the dark, right?
For sure, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit then. So when did you first decide that you wanted to go into pursue investment banking? Like, do you remember when that was?
Yeah. So, I mean, initially I was going to be a part of I always had this 5-year program in the back of my mind. It was an option that I could, a program I can opt into halfway through college, but I wasn't sure. So I was actually applying for junior internships during my actual junior year in the regular 4-year time frame. And I just wanted to get a job in finance more broadly. I didn't really understand, first of all, like the exit opportunities you get from IB, or just the level of prestige you get from working at IB versus other things. And I thought just maybe finance made sense, and I can just move around within there, pretty easily. Um, and so I just started applying places, and that really did not work out. Like, I think I applied to like 30 or 40 places, but didn't network with anyone, didn't understand like the how intense that process was and what it really entailed. So after like I kind of fell like flat on my face per se and didn't really get much, I realized that I actually have I can opt into another year, and I think if I really put my mind to it, I can put myself in a spot where I can get a really good offer. So, and I also wanted to get the cream of the crop job per se within finance, and that is, in my opinion, banking. So once I understood those things, it was like, okay, I have the time now. It's essentially the middle of my junior year, which would be the middle of someone's sophomore year, and I'm going to try and find the resources to help me out. So that's how I did it.
Got it. So the first half of your junior year, basically the second half of 2019 was when you were applying to these general finance jobs and nothing panned out. And then I guess end of 2019, beginning of 2020 was when you decided to seriously pursue banking. And then so you opted for the fifth year and then you started seriously looking into it. Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So pretty much then, like, when did you, relative to when you first decided that you want to pursue banking, from that point until when you joined Wall Street Mastermind, like how much time was in between? Like, were you kind of like attempting this on your own at first, or did you kind of just join Wall Street Mastermind from the get-go?
So like what gave me more insight into banking actually was watching, the Wall Street Mastermind like advertisement and then going to the first like info session.
Okay.
So that really opened my eyes, because first, like I don't have any friends who do banking. I don't know anyone really within my age
Yeah.
that I was close with that did banking at all,
Yeah.
let alone like any type of hardcore finance. So I
Yeah.
didn't really understand that world from
Yeah.
a job perspective. So once I saw that video and understood really like how the career was, how it worked out, like how the career paths you can take from banking, what you actually get within banking itself, I had a better understanding, and that's like kind of that helped me, that pushed me to pursue that specifically, I think. Then I tried it out a little bit on my own, but I was talking to you in the beginning, and I was trying it on on the side, but I think just the lack of knowledge that I had going through that process was an issue. So I think I needed to seek assistance.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, look, it's really, really tough when no one around you is doing this, and it's basically a new industry to you and kind of a black box in a way. And you're trying to navigate your way through that, and at the same time, you're coming from a small liberal arts school, and you're competing with, kids from Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Wharton, Columbia, NYU, some of these schools that are basically the complete opposite, where they have, all these finance and investment clubs and a ton of alumni on Wall Street and upperclassmen that have done it before that can give them advice. And it's just not a level playing field, right? And when you consider the fact that, like you said, you want to go for the cream of the crop banks, talking about anywhere from a 1% to 3% acceptance rate, depending on the bank, right? And so
Yeah.
I think, like there are a lot of people out there who probably used to be or even currently are in the same situation that you're in, which is feeling kind of lost and didn't really know what to do. So, so you decide, so, okay, so then you found us pretty early on, which is I guess, a good thing. But um, then you watched you said info session, or I guess our webinar. Then you jumped on a call with us, right? And then we probably talked for whatever, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't remember. But I think we had a pretty long conversation. What, like, ultimately made you decide to jump in to a program like this? Because, like, what we do is probably, I mean, I don't know how much research you did out there when you were looking for help, but what we do is pretty different from most of what everyone else is doing out there, right? So, like, what drew you to this kind of program, I guess?
Yeah. I think just first of all, the level of attention that Wall Street Mastermind gives its clients is pretty great, honestly. Like you get to go to office hours every week. You get to um, work with Sam and Adele like almost every single day, asking them questions, and you're a part of this sort of community where you just kind of feed off each other and get different people's perspectives on their process, whether it be in terms of just networking or knowing their technical questions or just general interview questions. All those things kind of help, and I actually like got access to like a couple people within the actual community that helped me out in terms of prepping for interviews, and we just talked about our processes together, which is really really great. And I think that was something that was lacking in school because none of my friends was pursuing banking.
Yeah,
So I think that's really really the community, honestly, and the like individual attention that
yeah,
you get
yeah,
is a main differentiator rather than just reading something online.
yeah. Yeah, it's you mentioned the community aspect. That's pretty interesting. And I think that's something that's kind of, to be honest, taken a life of its own probably over the past year or so. Um,
Mm,
but I find it to be really unique and quite honestly amazing that just how collaborative our clients are in terms of helping each other out and stuff. Like, people taking a higher view and then going in the Facebook group and posting the exact questions that they got so that everybody else can, know what the questions are beforehand. Stuff like that happening all the time. And you might think that people want to keep that stuff to themselves because it is a competitive process, right? But I feel like people around here, they don't really have like a scarcity mindset. It's kind of like, hey, let's all win together. Um, and I just think it's a beautiful thing. I mean, like, as the person that's like running this thing, when I see that, it makes me cry a little bit inside, like oh, that's amazing, like to see everyone helping each other out and stuff. And it just yeah, I think it's being a part of that community. I agree, that's like a huge aspect um of what Wall Street Mastermind is about. It's like, yes, like, yeah, learning from me and Adele and other people, um but like just having peers or friends that are going through the process with you together, and you guys are all struggling together. It's
yeah,
almost kind of like it's almost like pledging for a fraternity or something. It's like that's like a bond that you have, I guess,
yeah.
which I think is pretty special.
I
But
would also say with the
yeah,
community,
yeah,
one major point is that it's a major like motivator because you're seeing what other like what interviews other people are getting, what the timelines are. It's like it's a wake up call because everyone else in this community is on the ground floor and they're hearing this and that, and it really kind of gets you going in terms of pushing you to know your stuff and also like network a ton. So I would say that's also a major thing.
that's a great point. Which is, that's saying, like, you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with, right? Like, if you surround yourself with people who are like-minded and are ambitious and hardworking and motivated, like, you have no choice but to be the same way, right? Because otherwise you're gonna get left behind. Um, and so I think, like, environment really matters, right? Being that in that winning environment. But I also want to say, like, on this community point, like, I want to give you some huge props. Like, I mean, definitely towards probably like second half of your time in the program, I would say you're probably one of the biggest contributors within the community. Like a lot of times people ask questions, like we have for our listeners that don't know this, like we have our own Slack channel for all of our clients, and they can ask us questions anytime. And there's also obviously public channels where everybody can see each other's questions. And like we have a technical questions channel where people are every day just dropping different technical questions in there that they don't really understand or they don't know the answers to, right? And typically, either myself or one of the other coaches, like will go in there and answer these questions multiple times a day. But a lot of times when we go in and try to answer these questions, we'll find that Jared has already answered the question for other clients. And I was like, all right, great, awesome, Jared, making my life easy. But no, like, I mean, like, I'm laughing about it, but it's like when you've gotten to the point where you're answering other people's questions, that's when it's also a really good way to test yourself to see what level you're at, right? Because
Exactly.
I always tell people, like, when it comes to technicals, what a lot of people are doing is they're just memorizing these answers from the guides or whatever. But then because they're just memorizing it, if you actually ask them a different question, they won't know the answer, right? How you know that you truly grasp the concepts is when you can actually teach it to other people. And I felt like in a lot of instances, I saw that you were doing that, right? Like you were basically explaining these answers to other people. And that's why, I mean, I alluded to this in the beginning. I was like, I felt like you were one of the most like deserving, clients that we worked with in terms of just like, this guy deserves an offer because he knows his stuff. He knows his stuff better than most of my other clients, right? Like and obviously you didn't get there without putting in a ton of work. Like it wasn't like you started out that way, but like you did the work you're supposed to do and you got there, and then like it showed, right? It was very obvious. Like when we work with, I'm going on like a little bit of a rant here, but like when we work with a lot of different clients from different schools and different backgrounds and whatnot, and um, we can tell, or we have a sense inside, like in terms of how everybody stacks up against each other, right? Like we kind of have a sense for like, okay, this guy is definitely getting an offer, or this guy is not quite there yet and still needs more work and more help, and in which case we'll help them, obviously. But for you, I was like, yeah, Jared's gonna get an offer, right? And I know I always like kept telling you that, even when sometimes it didn't feel like that was gonna happen.
For
um,
sure.
so anyway, I went on a little tangent there, but again, I've always wanted to tell you, I was like, look, I really appreciate just like how much you're helping the other clients too, and I think that was really awesome.
Thank you.
So I guess you talked about office hours a little bit. You talked about the community. Um, like what else did we do in the program that you felt like really helped you? I mean, it could be whatever really, but like what did you feel like was the most impactful for you?
Just the little things in terms of knowing this is how you answer a certain question, knowing that you need to know your resume inside and out, and how do you go about doing that? How, like, to what extent, like checking some of the answers that I had, and helping me kind of craft my behavioral answers. And also what's super cool about the program is that you kind of have your behavioral answers that you come out with out at first, and they get checked and things like that, and your resume gets checked and whatnot. But over time that evolves, especially if you're kind of starting out a little bit early. So I was also able to kind of ask questions in office hours, ask questions independently about, you know, what if I answer a question like this? Or what if I change my resume like that? Would this be something that I can put on my LinkedIn? Helping me kind of understand how to evolve my profile, my candidacy over time was super helpful, because to be honest, a lot of the answers that you kind of a lot of the answers, even your story, even your main story, has to constantly evolve. It's not just you write it once and it's done. It's
Yeah.
ever changing, especially if you get a new job, and it makes a lot of sense to put it in there. So kind of
Yeah.
helping me evolve my candidacy was very, very helpful.
Yeah, because I mean, from the time I think you joined the program in like early January, right? And it's late September now, so it's been pretty much almost exactly 9 months. Obviously, during that time, you've been working on yourself. Like you said, you went out and got an M&A internship.
Mhm.
You're accumulating new experiences, and all of those things are going to like change not just your resume, which is obviously a living document, but your interview answers as well, right? And so a
Yeah.
lot of people think like, oh, I work on these answers one time and I'm done. It's like, no, you're constantly refining it and trying to make it just a little bit better, a little bit better, and a little bit better. And I think like the thing with our program, and you can probably attest to this, is that we don't really like limit you in terms of how much help you can get from us, right? I think um, I've seen other coaching programs out there where they're very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very transactional. It's like, hey, you pay for our program, you can get
Mhm.
2 revisions of your resume within the first 30 days. And we'll look at, you know, we'll do like 1 30-minute call with you. And like everything is listed out like very exact, this is how many of
Yeah.
this, and this that you get. And then like after that, like you're done, right? That's all you pay for. We're going to move on to the next person. Um, and for me, that's just like, look, until you have the job, something new is probably always going to come up where you're going to have a question about something. It's not really fair if I say I'm going to help you, but I'm only going to help you for this period of time, and then after that you're on your own. Because then what happens after that, right? And as you know, like the banking recruiting process, it could have been 2 months or 3 months, or it could have been like 9 months, right? It just
Yeah.
depends because like the banks are so spread out, and depending on like when you get your offer, like we we personally don't feel like we can predict how long it's going to take our clients to get the offer. So we just made a decision that hey, like whoever comes in decides to work with us, doesn't matter how long it takes them to get the job. In fact, our promise is that we'll continue to help you until you get the
Mhm.
job, however long it takes, right? Of course, we're incentivized to help you get the job as quickly as we can because then we can go and help more people, right? But like if we haven't done that, then like we're not going to stop, right? So I think that's a great point, which is just like having someone that's in your corner with you from the beginning to the end, and just like someone who's going to be as invested in your outcome almost as much as you are. I mean, no one's going to be as invested as you are, but I would say like we're probably right up there behind you, right? Like I think that's a huge thing as well.
For sure. 100%.
um so I guess like what ultimately was the outcome for you? Like obviously it was a long process. You went through a ton of interviews. You had
Yeah.
a bunch of really close calls, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um I mean, like how many final round interviews did you go to? Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh. So I'm trying to think. Um, well, in terms of interview processes total, it was like close to 10, which
Okay.
was crazy.
Yeah.
And final rounds, going to name them or
Sure, if you want, or like whatever you're comfortable with.
I'll just kind of say like, some really good banks,
Yeah.
some really good banks, some, bulge brackets and also, um, a couple of first rounds elite boutiques and, also, some final rounds at some, one final round at a elite boutique, another at a middle market bank, top middle market bank. Um, and am I missing any? There was like one, two, there was like four. There was 4 or 5 final round interviews that I had, during the whole process. And there are banks that like going into this whole thing, I was like, there's no way I'm gonna get an interview here. But I pushed through, and I got there. A
Yeah.
lot of them ended up, kind of going to the last round and not working out for whatever reason. I to this day don't know why, but
Yeah.
everything happens for a reason. And I'd also say, like, something that's really important in this process is that you need to have, like, really thick skin. Like, you need to be very comfortable with rejection. Like, you're going to be rejected almost like every day from people that you speak to, especially early on with some of these calls. And if you get on enough calls, like, you'll actually feel like um, you're almost getting a referral after every one of these calls, because you just know your stuff so well. Like, you know how to have a conversation rather than just, like, bat off a couple of questions, but you're going to follow the framework correctly. Um, and even if you get a bunch of referrals, like, you won't even get an interview at some places. It's a little bit of a crapshoot, but it's a numbers game, and you're kind of taught how to play that game.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, that's sort of the outcome for me, and what happened ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like you said, you had like 10 interviews. I mean, look, a lot of people would love to have that many interviews, right? And then like maybe half of those converted to final rounds. And then I know like after each final round interview, we would debrief, and I would always ask like, oh, how do you feel like it went? And then usually, most of the time, I remember from these conversations, you tell me like, I feel like that went really well. Like, you answered all their questions, and which wasn't surprising to me because, like I said, you really knew your stuff, right? And then so, I think there were several times where we had pretty high hopes that we're getting pretty close to the end here, and
Yeah.
then things that for whatever reason just doesn't work out. And
Yeah.
I think this is purely a guess, but one obviously is super competitive. We know that, right? Like,
Mhm.
and some of the feedback, like sometimes you went and ask, like one of the top banks that you interview with, you ask them for feedback from one of the guys that was referring you, and he pretty much just told you that they just didn't have that many spots, and you were great, but just like barely missed the cut and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like coming from a school like Brandeis, like you probably lost out to some other kids that, came from the more well-known target schools or whatever. And if you guys are both great, the natural human bias is like, well, let's just go with the Harvard kid, or let's just go with the Wharton kid, right? And it's almost like I feel like you're a bit disadvantaged, as in like you can't just be as good as other people. You almost have to be like a little bit better for them to like, you know, almost like take a chance. Like, oh, we never hired a guy from the school before. Like, should we do it
Mhm.
now? Right.
Yeah.
Um, but I think though the other thing is that um, that's you said it's a numbers game, but it's like that's why it's so important that you give yourself as many at bats as possible. Right.
Sure.
Like, imagine if you only had 2 interviews or 3 interviews. Like
Yeah.
you could have done great in them, and it could have just not worked out. Like sometimes there's luck and things like that too, right? Or
Mhm.
you just meet an interviewer who's having a bad day, and that's outside of your
Yeah.
control. Like they just had an argument with their wife that morning, and it's like, so. On that note, though, on the point of like this being a numbers game, when you talked about networking and getting referrals, um, talk to people about that a little bit. Like, because look, one common question I get from people who come from small non-target schools that don't have a lot of alumni is like,
Mhm.
I don't know who to reach out to, or like, who am I supposed to
Yeah.
talk to? There's no alumni from my school on Wall Street. I'm sure you ran into that, right?
Yeah.
But
Sure. Yeah.
how many people did you talk to throughout your recruiting process? Would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. So I reached out to 2,000 people, close to 2,000 people, which is a crazy number.
Wow.
And I spoke to, I think, close to 350 bankers and people that could help me get into banking, essentially, who were close to banking in a way. And obviously, those people were not all Brandeis people. A lot of them And a lot, I'd say like one bank that I interviewed for was because of a brand I saw online, but the other 9 out of 10 were based on very, very loose connections. Like, for example, if someone was from the same hometown as me, and I never knew who he was, and I saw on his LinkedIn that he was from my hometown, I would just reach out and hopefully we would get on a call. Or if one person, literally, I've gone on calls with people who went to Yale, and I'm from Connecticut, and I'm like, a student from Connecticut reaching out, and we began on a call. You know what I mean? As long as you like try and make that connection, it can work out. I remember even I got an interview at an elite boutique bank because one of the analysts there was Persian. I didn't know who he was, but I saw that I'm Persian. I saw that on his LinkedIn that he was Persian, and I try to make that connection or force it a little bit. And like to be honest, like a lot of appreciate it. He's reaching out to as many people as he can. And some people are also like, why are you reaching out to me? And then I would explain it to them, and they'd be like, oh wow, like, that makes sense. Obviously, you don't have a lot of people at your school, but you really want this. So that also kind of helped. But
why are you reaching out to me? Well, I'm from Connecticut and you go to Yale.
Like honestly, like it doesn't matter. Like if you reach out to a lot of people and you do it in a respectful way, in the way that Sam kind of helps you do it, then it won't piss anyone off or get anyone kind of upset because you're not so in their face, but it does show that you're hungry. And then I will also say about like the target school thing, even though like it may seem like you're at a huge disadvantage that you're at a non-target, and it is true up front, you definitely are, you can 100% use it to your advantage within the interview. Like something that I realized over time is that like I've had to work really, really hard to get even into those interview processes. And I listed some of the numbers of people that I spoke to at that specific bank and in general, and the steps I took coming from a non-target to get to that position. And that level of grind and that level of attention to detail that a non-target school person might have, because they have to kind of push themselves harder a little bit, really bodes well with some of the bankers, and helped me a lot when trying to break into a lot of interview processes. Definitely in the kind of late stages of the whole thing.
You're absolutely right. It's like when they realize how much work you put into this, and that shows how much grind you have, which is honestly a really, really great trait to have for this role, obviously. But also just like how much you want this, right? Like most people, I don't think would go to the lengths that you went to get this outcome, right? But I mean that's amazing, and I think that's some really good advice there, which is just like people have there's this myth or misconception out there, I don't know how to start that, you can only talk to a banker if they went to your school. Well, it's like if they went to your school, that's just one type of connection that you could have with them, or one similarity you could have with them. But there could be so many other similarities that you might have with someone else, if you just know how to leverage it, right? And then of course, like you said, you have to reach out the right way, and you have to know what to talk to them about. Like, because even if you reach out to them the right way and you get them to talk to you, if you're really bad at having that conversation, or you don't know how to do it in a way that gets them to actually want to refer you, it's not going to matter, right? There's so many steps within even just the networking process that you could trip up multiple times along the way, right? If you don't know what you're doing. And then, like you said, even like if you do everything correctly and you get that referral, sometimes it still doesn't work out, right? So that's how hard this process is. But I mean, look, that's amazing that, just like I said, how much work you put into this, which is again also just backs up what I said earlier about why I felt like you're so deserving of this. I guess last question for you. You've already given so many pieces of amazing advice, to be honest. But like, if you were to go back to when you first started this process, knowing what you know now, having come out the other side of it, what's something that
Yeah.
Jared today would tell the Jared 9 months ago? It was just like something that you wish you knew back then.
hmm Yeah, 9 months ago. I mean, maybe I would tell myself, um, realize you want to do banking earlier. I'm kidding. You obviously can't do that. So you got to work within the time frame that you're given. But I would say just one thing that really stuck out to me within the process and really sped up the process towards the end was having like the courage to like speak to literally anyone, like literally like if this person is the global head of X, Y, and Z, like don't be scared to talk to that person and reach out. Like there's no reason why you should. I actually got my offer now because I did that. So have the first of all, like I would actually, front load a lot of your conversations with analysts and maybe even people that don't go to your school who are in high positions because you can use those strong connections later to really, really push for you if you've really built up that skill set. But so front load it, I'd say, with some analysts and associates from places that aren't necessarily your low hanging fruits, because that could help you break into the system a little bit and break into it. Like literally really learn what's going on, because like Sam's going to teach you everything, but you got to be able to practice it. Like it's a job about, it's a process about doing and learning and doing. So once you get that down, then once you're comfortable speaking to some of those, higher level guys, you can have those like really efficient conversations and make your time worthwhile. I wish I would have done that earlier on in the process versus in the last like 2-3 months of everything.
Got it. That's great, man. That's a great piece of advice. A lot of times I ask people this question of like, what advice did you wish you had? The most popular advice that we've gotten in all of the client interviews I've done is actually, I wish I started earlier. So, so everybody always says that, and I always try to tell everybody like, hey, start earlier, start now, and people always procrastinate. But no, but the other advice that you gave about networking, I think like that's huge. You're absolutely right. Like people get intimidated when it comes to like speaking to more senior people. And a lot of times I know a lot of people that only network with analysts, or they only network with people that are 1 or 2 years older than them because that's who they're comfortable talking to. Well, the global head of XYZ group is probably going to have a lot more pull than, first year analysts in that exact same group, right? Of course, they're probably harder to reach and they're a lot busier. And so you can't like reach out and waste their time because you're not going to be pleased if you do that. But like you said, if you get good at your craft, those people, they enjoy talking to someone who's smart and ambitious and motivated and has put in the work, right? As long as you show well, basically. So that's great advice, man. I love it. I feel like you dropped a lot of knowledge bombs just in the past 45 minutes or so. So I'm sure people are really appreciative. So, but anyway, at the end of the day, I guess the conclusion is, like you got an offer, obviously. Like, you want to kind of tell people what the outcome was for you at the end of all this, this long journey?
Yeah, I ended up getting an offer at Jefferies for their summer of 21 internship program.
Got it. That's awesome. I mean, Jefferies is a great firm, obviously. I know you're really excited about it. And so super happy for you. I think I've said this 5 times already on this call, but I feel like you're super deserving of it. And I'm always happy for my clients when they get offers, obviously. I was like extra happy for you, obviously, because I know how much work you put in. So huge
Appreciate it.
congrats on that. So look, guys, like hopefully you guys have found this to be valuable. I would say my key takeaway from this conversation with Jared, I mean, there's so many good takeaways you could have, but I would just say like really having the, Jared called it thick skin. I would probably call it, resiliency, and just being able to take rejection after rejection after rejection, especially if you're coming from, non-target school where you are going to be, relatively speaking, a little bit more handicapped, right? But by no means does that mean that you can't compete with these kids that are going to, target schools and whatnot, right? Like you can absolutely still break into banking if you have the grind and if you're willing to put in the work and you're using the proper strategies and proper frameworks. So look, if you're in a similar spot as Jared, like, maybe you're feeling like, you don't have a lot of resources and you just need that guidance, and you want to kind of level the playing field a little bit, then we're here for you, right? So I want to invite you to book a free strategy session with us. This is, kind of what we do with everyone, before we, even decide if we should work together. Like sometimes it's not a good fit, and sometimes we might not be able to get you the outcome that you want, but we're always going to be honest with you. Even if from a non-target school, we're not going to automatically just write you off. We're going to tell you exactly what we think is possible with our help, based on, the situation you tell us, and then we can see what makes most sense from there, right? And at a minimum, we'll give you whatever advice we can give you. Even if you want to just take that and go and implement it on your own, and that's totally cool. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would invite you to just go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so you can go to www.wallstmastermind.com/apply. And yeah, just book a time on our team's calendar to talk to us. Our calendars are usually pretty packed, so the sooner you do it, the better. And we look forward to talking to you. So anyway, Jared, I want to thank you for just like coming on here and taking the time to talk to everyone about your experience and giving so much great advice to everyone. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And again, looking forward to seeing what's ahead of you, man. Like all the success, that you're gonna have. And obviously, I don't think I need to say this, and I don't think you will be, but don't be a stranger. And feel free to continue to use this as a resource if you ever have questions about anything. And I look forward to just continuing to work with you.
Sure. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, guys, that'll be it for today's episode. And thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back with more of these in the near future. All right. Talk soon. Bye.